I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. You can call or text the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. So we got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, I'm thrilled to get to introduce you to Mr. Jordan Stein. He's the communications director with the fantastic group, the growing organization, Gun Owners of America. I'm sure you guys have heard about them. They are an uncompromising organization when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. So we'll be talking to Jordan Stein, thanks to the Patriots Fact 746 for setting that interview up. Now, we also have Senator Mark Johnson will be on the program at 7:05 doing his impression of the session 2019, as well as Senator Scott Flippo at 7:33. So we got three guests today, and really excited to get to talk some Second Amendment rights, as well as get to talk to two Republican senators, figure out what were their thoughts generally, specifically on some things, and we'll get right to it. Now, first off, let's start today with what Mitch McConnell said. This has got the Democrats freaking out, though. Now, I know Mitch McConnell. I know you guys take an extra sip of coffee because you might fall asleep, but listen to the substance of what the majority leader in the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell, is saying. Take it away, Joe.
Yes, seriousness is not what we've seen from the Democratic Party in recent days. Not serious. What we've seen is a meltdown, an absolute meltdown. An inability to accept the bottom line conclusion on Russian interference from the special counsel's report, which said the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. That's the conclusion. 2 years of exhaustive investigation and nothing
to establish
the fanciful.
Just pause right there. Hillary Clinton is in the news because she is actually saying that the 2016 election was stolen from her. Have you heard about this? You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you, end quote. Exactly. That Joe's got a great memory in there. He said, what happened to accepting the results of the 2016 election? That's funny because in October 2016, Hillary Clinton said every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. That is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. He is denigrating. He's talking down our democracy, and I, for one, am appalled, end quote. Way to go. Yay, Hillary. There we go. Example of hypocrisy. But this is what she said about the Russia investigation. Quote, this is how the left is spinning it. Quote, the Mueller report could not be clearer. The Russians interfered in our election and Trump obstructed justice. Do you see how they're moving the goalposts here? Do you understand how they're moving the goalposts? At first it was Donald Trump conspired with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary to win. That's the crime, Russia collusion. Let's look into it. And if there's a crime there, then we're going to charge people. They didn't find that. The report specifically says that did not happen. And so they've now moved the goalposts to obstruction. How many of the people around you right now, this is how powerful the media is still, how many people around you right now think that the Mueller report was about investigating whether Trump obstructed justice. I mean, people are really confused right now. In fact, now that we know what we know about the FBI, the intelligence services being weaponized against the president, what this really was an attempt to stall and to weigh down the Trump presidency in an attempt to get him so frustrated that he would do something that they could then claim was obstruction of justice. But there was no collusion, and most of the time, now not all the time, but William Barr said most of the time, if you're going to have obstruction, there is an underlying provable crime that you pair the two, you pair with together. Anyway, back to the ever exciting Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Republican Mitch McConnell.
Conspiracy theory that Democratic politicians and TV talking heads had treated like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, that Trump was a KGB agent. Foregone conclusion. Oh, we got the circle of death.
They told everyone there had been a conspiracy between Russia and the Trump campaign. Yet on this central question, the special counsel's finding is clear. Case closed. Case closed.
Yep. Oh, by the way, this is a video of McConnell been retweeted by
this
the
ought
president.
To be good news for everyone.
Donald Trump's Twitter, case closed,
but my
is what the
Democratic
tweet
colleagues
is.
seem to be publicly working through the 5 stages of grief.
Oh, absolutely they are.
First stage is denial. Remember what happened when the Attorney General released his preliminary letter describing the special counsel's bottom line legal conclusion? Denial.
Oh, of course.
Immediately, totally baseless speculation that perhaps Attorney General Barr hadn't quoted the report properly.
Yep.
But then, Madam President, comes stage 2. Anger.
Oh, yeah, they're in anger.
Anger.
Well, they've been angry
Welcome
since 2016.
to Washington in recent days.
I'm trying to help Mitch out here.
The Democrats are angry. Angry that the facts disappointed them. Angry that our legal system will not magically undo the 2016 election for
I hope
them.
they get to the 5th stage, which is acceptance.
And they've opted to channel all their partisan anger onto the Attorney General.
The 5. Oh yeah, okay. That last part. That's why I wanted to play to the end. Okay, so they've opted to put all of their anger on the Attorney General. Okay, here's a guy that served H.W. Bush. Here's a guy that, according to, I think, was it Joe DeGeneva? It was some. I think it was DeGeneva. He's the FISA law, or I think former FISA attorney. He's the guy that was on Hannity saying that the FBI hired 4 private contractors to spy on Republicans or American citizens before the 2016 elections. I'm pretty sure that was DeGeneva. But anyway, so you have William Barr. They're piling on William Barr. They want William Barr to essentially they got to trash him. But DeGeneva said that when it was announced that he was going to be the next Attorney General, that there were the Department of Justice or the FBI shuddered, meaning they understood, like, you can't hide anything from this guy. He knows how things work. He's been in the intelligence community before, and he is a by-the-book Attorney General. And because he's a by-the-book guy, at least this is what people say. Now, they used to say this stuff about Jim Comey, by the way, so we can be disappointed, okay? We always leave that in the realm of possibilities because we all have a healthy American attitude about this. And what is a healthy American attitude? Joe, what's a healthy American attitude? Skepticism. To be skeptic, yes, to have a healthy skepticism of those who are in power at all times. That is an American way to look at government. So there were shudders because he's a by-the-book guy. But I think they have to paint William Barr as the bad guy because James Comey and John Brennan and Clapper they may all be arrested soon. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, right? It's like that's not going to happen. That's just some sort of, right-wing wish list. But, I mean, I don't know if you guys are reading the same stuff that I'm reading in terms of the reports of Sarah Carter and John Solomon. This is not just something that's made up. There's substance to this. There is absolute substance to this. And so, anyway, we're going to stay on top of this, but I wanted you to hear that from Mitch McConnell. I don't know when's the last time you got a Mitch McConnell clip in there. Still looking at our graphic for this week. Arkansas serving Blue Bill ice cream. Let's see, what do we have here? Real quick update on the R word. Okay, Alabama Democrat John Rogers, Senator Doug Jones told me I was right on abortion. Now, this is interesting. Doug Jones is the guy that beat Roy Moore, okay? And then John Roberts is that state representative that said that Donald Trump Jr.'s mom should have aborted him, that's the best argument for abortion. And then he went on to call Donald Trump Jr. The R word. More on that in a minute. But the interesting thing here is that now this state representative, John Rogers, his honesty about what he really thinks is kind of getting the Democrat Party in Alabama in a little bit of hot water, because he claims that the senator from Alabama, the United States Senator Doug Jones, I know we got some real generic names here, John Rogers, Doug Jones. Doug Jones called him up and yelled at him and said, I know you're right about what you said about abortion. We kill them now, we kill them later. We can kill them before, we kill them now, or kill them with the electric chair. But you're killing me. It was just basically, anyway, he went on some radio show and said, you're killing me, you're killing me, you're killing me. Yeah, Joe says that's what they do to babies. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. But then go to the next article, or remind us what he said. Can we get a reminder? This is actually what Doug Jones said about Donald Trump Jr. Listen to this.
Today, Donald Trump Jr. condemned your comments. Do you have a response to the president's son?
Hey, that's an honor. Donald Trump Jr. did that. Thank God. Right on. That's if you know I'm right. Because I don't know that he's been right on since he's been here. That proved the right to make a decision about abortion. Him being born, that's proved the right to. That's a very, very good defense I have for abortion right to him. Look at him and say, I wonder should have aborted him when he was born, but he would have made that stupid statement, right? So his parents made a decision for him. That's a decision he made for him. So that's the first proof I got that mother had a right to have abortion. They made a decision to have him, didn't they? They could have aborted him, but they made a decision to keep him. Because he's evidently retarded. Crazy. Donald Trump's son, I know he's something wrong with that boy. I think I can tell something wrong with him. He said, hey, that's the best defense I got for abortion right there, looking at him.
All right. The science fiction dork in me can't help. So I was can't help but say this, but I was, leave that up there. Headline, State Representative John Rogers, I was wrong about the retarded thing, end quote. Okay, so he now says he was wrong about the retarded thing. I'm going to get his quote in a minute. But, hey, it just dawned on me. Doesn't that kind of feel like a threat when you're saying, well, his mom should have aborted him? It shouldn't, and I was like, shouldn't the Secret Service, investigate this guy as, threatening, the president's son? And the answer is no, unless time travel were real. If time travel were real, the Secret Service would have to investigate something like this. Sorry, I know. That's just how my weird, nerdy brain works. Okay, State Representative John Rogers. I was wrong about the retarded thing. Can we scroll down here? This is, I don't actually have this one because this was a last-minute addition because I found it. Let's keep going real quick. I just want to get that full paragraph that at the very bottom. Right there, okay. Quote, up. Quote, the R word. The R word is a word that's old and dates way back to the 1940s. It's not mentally challenged. It's different, meaning to it now. But I did use it. I was wrong about the retarded thing. I'm shying away from the fact that I used the word retarded. Now, that's got to be funny. You start your apology by not using the word retarded, and you say the R word. The R word, and then you proceed to use the word retarded twice in the rest of your explanation. Now, if this was a Republican trying to make this kind of apology, first of all, if this was a Republican, this would be on MSNBC like nonstop. If there was a Republican out there saying these things. But hey, once again, an example of a huge, huge double standard. And then we have this article. We're going to take a break, but we're going to get to this in a minute. Breitbart.com, Forgotten Man, comeback story. Under Trump, red counties are economically thriving. We'll give you that story here in just a moment. Also, we have a great show for you coming up. We're going to be talking with Mr. Jordan Stein from the Gun Owners of America at 6:33. Then Senator Mark Johnson's impression of the session, 2019, and Senator Scott Flippo's impression of the session. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So, folks, the Young America's Foundation. This is interesting because I have this YouTube video here. Back on April 11th, Michael Knowles is attacked on stage while speaking at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. During this attack, we played a very short clip of this video for you the first hour. He thought it was like a milk-like substance. Then I think they later figured out, Joe, you were telling me they figured out it was some sort of bleach shot out of water again. I mean, this is from the intolerant left. So Young America's Foundation and their website, the conservative movement starts here. They're exactly right. And yet they go to these college campuses. They literally are going into the line of fire, trying to debate, trying to compete in the arena of ideas, and the left just wants to shut them down. They just want to shut them down.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So the president has tweeted. That's right. 28 minutes ago, the president of the United States tweeted. I'm starting to do this now where I always have his Twitter feed up during the broadcast because he likes to tweet during this time, if not earlier. But so the New York Times has a piece out today where they've gotten Trump's tax returns. Did you hear about this, Joe? So the New York Times have obtained President Trump's tax returns from like the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s. And it shows big losses. It shows, I think, out of those 10-year period, he only paid taxes twice because there were such massive losses, casinos and real estate and stuff like that. And they're now saying he lied to the American people. He was elected because people thought he had been successful and he was able to manage a business. And from 85 to 95, this guy was a joke. And this is what's going on, right? So the president has responded to this, quote, news story, end quote. He says real estate developers in the 1980s and 1990s, more than 30 years ago, were entitled to massive write-offs and depreciation, which would, if one was actively building, show losses and tax losses in almost all cases. Much was non-monetary, sometimes considered tax shelter. You would get it by building or even buying. You always wanted to show losses for tax purposes. Almost all real estate developers did, and often renegotiate with banks. It was sport. Think about that. It was sport. Additionally, the very old information put out is a highly inaccurate fake news hit job. It's amazing to me how they won't stop. And it's amazing to me that they think people who are Trump supporters or who are new Trump supporters who are doing better in the economy and everything else, maybe like his rhetoric, but like what he's done, his policies. Some people think that Trump's not building, making the coalition broader. I disagree because of the result. It's going to be results based. Even with the media not reporting what those results are. Oh, Trump's crazy. He'll never get 3% economic growth. Well, he got it. All these jobs are coming in. And so they want to say, but he got to be elected president. Not only did Russia steal it, but he lied to people because he made them think he was a businessman. And he really, from 1985, 1995, he didn't pay any taxes, and he's just a terrible, incompetent businessman because he showed all these losses. Just counting on people to be ignorant of, well, obviously he explains it right there. There's always another side. Here is this article, speaking of how well people are doing. The Forgotten Man comeback story. Under Trump, red counties economically thrive. Red counties that voted for President Trump are booming more economically under his presidency than blue counties that voted for his Democrat opponent. Let's see. Brookings' Mark Murrow and Jason Witten wrote this on Tuesday. As the 2020 conversations ramp up, the red and blue economic growth patterns in the U.S. continue to be an enormous focal point. Now, as new data comes out on the years 2017 to 18, and the president crows, it's clear that counties that voted for President Trump have been winning a little, or at least winning a little more than they were. Specifically, the geography of growth has changed somewhat, at least for the moment. Counties that voted for Donald Trump are seeing a bit faster employment growth than they were in the Obama years and are now adding jobs a little faster than are counties that voted for Hillary Clinton. The red counties that voted for Trump over Clinton delivered him 306 electoral votes and victories in 30 and a half states, while Clinton won the popular vote but failed to win even 20 states, finishing with just 19 and a half states. Let's see, all you people with the Electoral College, like, oh, the majority. I mean, you want to end the Electoral College because you don't believe in minority rights. But, well, we do believe in, if minority only means the color of someone's skin, then we do. But if we're just talking about opinions, minority opinion. Anyway, scroll down. Let's look at this map. Just real quick before we go to break, those of you watching on the YouTube channel or Facebook.com/Conduit News, look at that map of counties. Man, I mean, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what consensus looks like. We'll be right back with Mr. Jordan Stein from Gun Owners of America. Don't go anywhere. Because they don't want to actually have a civil debate. And that is very, very alarming. It's discouraging. Here to talk more about this is Young America Foundation spokesman Spencer Brown. Now, Spencer, can I say spokesman or should I say spokesperson?
That's actually something that I've been criticized for by the left previously, because I do identify as a spokesman, but they've informed me that that's not very inclusive or tolerant and assumes a gender binary and all that other crazy stuff. But here, I'm a spokesman.
Here, you're spokesman. Okay, good. So I see this article over at townhall.com. It's written by you, posted on April 17th. 4 truths that will probably get you banned from a college campus in 2019. Now, this is something that you're intimately familiar with because you've been there and helped get people like Ben Shapiro and others to college campuses to speak, right?
Yeah, so Young America's Foundation, one of our main sort of outlets for reaching young people and inspiring them with conservative ideas is our nationwide campus lecture program. So as you mentioned, we take people like, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Katie Pavlich, these leading conservatives from different sort of spheres of the movement, and bring their ideas to college campuses. Because what we found is that obviously in the classroom these days, the ideas are either completely ignored or if they are mentioned, basically just demonized and, portrayed as some sort of radical, fringe way of thinking. And so we work to make sure that students have a chance to hear these ideas. And as you mentioned, we've seen a lot of crazy opposition, and I think what we saw happen in Knowles at UMKC was sort of a new level of intolerance where it was literally an assault on a conservative just because he dared to get up and say that men are not women.
That's incredible. And that's actually your first point in this town hall piece, a quote from Ben Shapiro. To pretend that a man is a woman if he believes he is a woman is objectively untrue. That is a true statement. And yet if you say it on a college campus, people lose their minds.
Well, that's the really scary part about what the left has done with higher education today is they've kind of gotten rid of this idea of objective truth or, really any truth, and instead everyone has replaced it with their version of the truth or my truth, as they often say. And so that just creates a huge problem when you're supposed to be learning things. How can you ever not get 100% on a quiz if you get an answer wrong? Because can't you just argue now that your truth is different than what the truth is? And it's just absurd that now, basic biological, it's in your genes. The truth about who a person is now completely irrelevant depending on how someone feels. And we see a lot, the feelings are what are most important on college campuses now, and they set up safe spaces when a conservative shows up in case their feelings get hurt. And it's just sort of a really, sort of a corruption of the purpose of higher education, which is to discuss, maybe difficult or new or different ideas that you haven't heard. And so instead, a quote like that will quite literally get you.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. I want to remind you guys that the Patriots of Act 746 are on a mission to educate you as an Arkansan about what your gun rights are. Here in Arkansas, we are a permitless carry or constitutional carry state, which means you can carry a firearm open or concealed without a permission slip from the government. It's pretty fantastic. A 2013 law decriminalized the possession of a weapon. Here in Arkansas, increasing the burden of proof while you're carrying. So it's, essentially there's no law that says that you're allowed to sit on your front porch and drink iced tea, but you're perfectly free to do it because there's no law that says you can't. And that's the status of Arkansas gun laws today. And so if you want to know more about the Patriots of Act 746, you need to go to Facebook.com. You need to search for them and become part of the 17,000-plus member group today. Get educated about what you can and can't do, where you can carry, where you can't carry, that sort of thing, all at the Patriots of Act 746. Now, because of them, they are now forging relationships with great groups that are, consistent on their principles. They're uncompromising on the Second Amendment. Now, one of those groups is the Gun Owners of America. And here now with us on the phone, I have Mr. Jordan Stein, who is the Director of Communications for Gun Owners of America. They're a grassroots organization representing more than 1.5 million gun owners. And Jordan is on the line. Jordan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. What can you tell us about gun owners of America?
Well, I like to say that GOA is the real, no compromise gun rights group. We actually believe in shall not be infringed, and that means that we oppose all forms of gun control. Whether that's a permit to carry a gun. We're the original group to support constitutional carry, like what Arkansas has, and what I believe 17 states now have. We oppose background checks of all forms, and I feel like we're the group that puts action into restoring shall not be infringed.
I agree with you, and that is a reputation that you guys are getting. You guys have, and it's spreading. And I think when it comes to the text of the Second Amendment, people are starting to realize, hey, wait a second, this is not just about guns. Or at least this is what I'm realizing. I mean, it is about guns. It's specifically talking about guns, but this is really about our natural right to self-defense, isn't it?
I agree. The Second Amendment isn't about hunting or sport shooting. It's about preventing tyranny and self-defense from tyranny, and then we don't try to hide that or hide behind other things. I mean, we lay it out there, and we're vocal about our Second Amendment rights at GOA.
So tell me some of the things you guys are doing. I mean, obviously, you guys got to, disagree with President Trump on the old the bump stock ban.
Yeah, it's sadly after the Vegas shooting and bump stocks were reportedly used in that shooting, he moved to tell the ATF to essentially rewrite, definitions of machine guns, and how those are defined to include bump stocks. And sadly, about 3 months ago, over our objections and our appeals at the Supreme Court for a stay on the order, the turn-in period came up, and people were forced to either turn in their lawfully obtained property, destroy it, or become a felon overnight. We have litigation in the courts, and we're fighting this. And we believe when the court case is judged on the merits, we believe we'll win and we'll get this overturned. But it's very sad to see Trump to move this, and actually react to gun controllers and throw them a bone, because right after the March for Our Lives rally, one of the gals speaking said, that bump stock ban, that's just the first step. We want more. And that's why with GOA, we can't compromise on the Second Amendment, because if you try to appease the gun grabbers, they're just going to come back and double down and want more. So that's why we have to stand firm and reject all forms of gun control.
Yeah, I mean, I know the left denies this. They say, we don't want to take your guns. But yeah, there are people out there on the left that absolutely do want to take your guns. I mean, absolutely. And so it's like, okay, well, are you just, uneducated, you've got good intentions. But I'm not willing to even really entertain that. If you're on the left and you're for all this gun controllers and stuff, you're only going to make the law-abiding citizen less safe. I mean, I've posited this many times. We're talking with Jordan Stein from Gun Owners of America. Theoretically, yeah, you could end the ability to kill people faster or quickly if you were to get every single gun. I mean, if it were possible, like if every gun was like destroyed or something. But that's never going to happen. Like, there's no way to ever actually do that. And I wouldn't support it even if you could, because I want my guns. But it just kind of shows the flaw in their logic there, and they refuse to admit that bad guys are going to keep breaking the law.
Exactly, and ironically, most of these mass shootings occur where people can't carry guns. I think of what happened tragically last night in Colorado.
Yes.
Well, in a Colorado school, sadly, schools are gun-free zones under federal law. Aren't normal everyday people who carry their guns at Walmart typically can't carry in a school, and so that gives people with ill will, who aren't stopped by background checks or a sign on the door, to cause harm to people. And we advocate for repealing gun-free zones. and give people a chance to shoot back.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the only thing that works. We've talked about that before too, Jordan. On the program, you got to have somebody that's going to fire bullets back in their direction, because that's the only way that things are going to stop. I was following the Daily Wire reporter Ryan Saavedra. I think that's how you pronounce his name, but he posted a Washington Times article, or retweeted it, about that shooter in Colorado, which is very, very close to, it's a STEM school, very, very close to Columbine. And just for our listeners, we didn't report this earlier, but police identify the suspect, and social media profiles suggest the teen hated Christians, hated Trump, called himself a grunge fan, in that he was addicted to pain. So we're talking with Jordan Stein from Gun Owners of America. He's the Director of Communications. Jordan, what can you tell us? What is GAO doing, or GOA doing, about these red flag laws being proposed across the country?
So red flag laws are the greatest legislative threat to the Second Amendment right now. And it's something that we are opposing everywhere. We fought them in Colorado, and sadly the legislature, denied passed them over our objections. But, we're finding that in most sensible states like Arkansas, that legislatures are rejecting these red flag laws because you have so many constitutional problems with them. You throw out due process because it's typically an ex parte hearing, which means the person who owns the guns isn't there to present his side, and typically when only one side's given, the judge will sign anything that's put before him. So we're really rallying the grassroots on this and urging people to contact their state legislatures and their federal lawmakers as well, because sadly in Congress, Lindsey Graham held his hearing a few months ago on red flag laws, and that was very discouraging to see him supporting that. But we're fighting back. We feel like we really have many in the 2H community and the gun rights community behind us on this issue, and we're confident we can stop them in the majority of places.
Yeah, you had that guy in Maryland. They tried to execute a red flag law on him, and he wound up dead. The cops showed up, and they killed the guy.
Yeah, well, I know if it were me, if someone's knocking on my door at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm certainly going to go to the door armed. And that's what we call these gun confiscation orders, because that's what they really are. Again, you take the Bill of Rights and you throw it out the window, and it's just in order to take people's guns. And that's why we have to stand firm so strongly against this. In fact, I've seen where the ACLU has actually opposed these gun confiscation orders because they so strongly violate due process.
Man, I understand you're going to be. By the way, we're talking with Jordan Stein from Gun Owners of America. I understand you're going to be in Arkansas in October with Chris Ann Hall at the Capitol in the Rotunda. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm very excited to come out there. I've actually never been to Arkansas, so it'll be my first time. I'm looking forward to it and meeting our members and people in the gun rights community and just the liberty movement overall. I'm very excited about that. I believe the date is October 10th.
Yes, yeah, and it's being put on. I think the Arkansas Liberty Coalition. They're bringing Chris Ann Hall back. She's going to teach some classes, which are she's really good at that. And it's. Let me ask you this. I mean, when you have the Gun Owners of America and you guys are trying to get into other states, you've got a group here like the Patriots of X 746 that has done that. So much organization. I mean, did you find that encouraging? Because I know you guys are trying to have impacts all across the nation, but do you find that kind of a repetitive cycle that you have patriots in all states really that are really committed to the Second Amendment? They really understand what the intent was.
Absolutely. At GOA, we're happy to work with any group that shares our values, and talking with some of the folks kind of behind the scenes there. I really get the feeling that they're certainly no compromise people and certainly willing to, work with them and beat back bad legislation and put forward good legislation as well. And it's good to see more people realizing that, we just can't compromise on the right to keep and bear arms. We just can't give little pieces of it here and there, because one day we'll wake up and we won't have anything left.
You're exactly right. Let me ask you this. How much of the ignorance of maybe, I don't know if I say the average person, but there's a lot of people out there who are ignorant towards guns. They're afraid of them. Why do you think so many people are afraid of firearms?
I think it's because they've never been exposed to them, and they've never been shown how to demonstrate and shoot and shown how it functions properly and safely. What I try to do every chance I get is take a new person out to the range, start them off on the proper firearm with, eye and ear protection, and show them, okay, this is how a gun works. This is, how loud it is or not loud it is, depending on the caliber, and actually show them how it works. And oftentimes I've found that, they come around, oh, this is fun. This is not what I saw in the movies or on TV. This is anything like that. This is something I want to own. We have the media and the movies and the local nightly television that just demonizes firearms, and it makes them not to be these evil killing machines, which they're really not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just goes back to the intent, and it goes back to, like what this guy's done in Colorado. I mean, there are still going to be people committing violent acts, and bad guys are still going to get them, and so we need to have the good guys have them. Jordan Stein, I really appreciate it. It's been really good meeting you. I enjoyed speaking with you yesterday, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. I look forward to meeting you in October, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Can you tell us where they can find out more about Gun Owners of America?
Absolutely. You can go to our website at gunowners.org. That you can find out more information about us. You can sign up for our free action alerts. If you're so inclined, you can join. Our membership is typically under what it costs to buy a box of ammo, so we try to keep it cost down so anyone can join. But we'd be honored to have your listener support. We need as many people as possible coming to the true no compromise stance on the right to keep and bear arms, and that's what we try to do here at GOA.
All right. Jordan Stein, I appreciate it, sir. You have a great day.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And building on that, folks, I want to remind you to go to Facebook as well and search for Patriots of X746 and become part of that grassroots organization and become educated into, if this is the first time, I get texts from friends that are listening to the show. Well, some friends are showing that they don't listen every day. But I get texts from personal friends and stuff, and they say, wait, I just heard you interview some guy that said that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state and we don't need a permit to carry concealed or open. I just heard you, that's crazy. I had no idea. I mean, not crazy and actual crazy, but you know what I mean? Like, people are excited when they hear that news, and they have been indoctrinated to think for decades now in the state that you have to have a permission slip to exercise what is your natural human right to self-preservation. So go to Facebook, search for Patriots of X746, and request to join that group. Folks, we're going to take a break. Coming up at 7:05, Senator Mark Johnson giving his impression of the session. Coming up at 7:33, Senator Scott Flippo will be giving his impression of the session. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
From a campus, or in Michael Mull's case, assaulted.
Talk about that UC Berkeley situation. Back in 2017, there was a lawsuit. Whatever happened with that, and why did you guys sue?
Yeah, that was a very crazy situation. So we at Young America's Foundation have been working with the Berkeley College Republicans for years to bring in conservative speakers to that otherwise, loony leftist campus. And what we found is 3 times in a row, when we tried to bring in 3 different speakers to that campus, administrators were pointing to this unwritten policy known as their high-profile speaker policy and using that to say that we were not allowed to have somebody speak on the main part of campus, they weren't allowed to speak after 3 p.m., and they weren't allowed to advertise that there was an event taking place. And so all of a sudden we realized this has happened 3 times in a row, this policy, we can't find it anywhere. And it's only being applied to conservatives. So then we went ahead and filed that federal lawsuit up there in the Ninth Circuit, and that battle dragged on for close to...
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So there's an economic phenomenon that takes place between the government and between big business. This economic phenomenon that takes place is something that many of you may be familiar with, but it can take it can have different specific elements depending on what industry or business that you're talking about. But fundamentally, what happens right now, what we are seeing, we're going to continue to see more of this, is that technology increases. There's a business somewhere that uses new technology and innovates as a way to deliver a service or product to a consumer. And by doing that and thinking outside of the box and using newer technology, let's say, for the most part, I'm referring to the internet. That's a main component. You're able to more efficiently give someone a service or product. Now, this could be done by doing something online. This could be done by doing, let's say, the Uber services. And what do you see when you use an Uber? Right? It was a big deal. Or you use Lyft. It was a huge deal. It was so convenient. And then the established businesses that are still essentially living in the Stone Age, they get upset that they're not making their money because they have a competitor who's not being regulated by the government in the same way or being taxed by the government in the same way. And so what ends up happening is the big business then lobbies the government, and the government's like, oh, wait, what? You mean there's more money that is out there that's not being taxed by this new technology, this new business that's utilizing a new technology to deliver products and services easier, faster to the consumer? Instead of the big business demanding to be deregulated, instead of the big business demanding to have tax cuts on them, they then partner with the government, and you have now a giant economic killing beast where you have 2 people that have different goals, but they use each other to attain them. The government wants more of the people's money so it can grow, and the business wants to use the government to ensure that they don't have to compete and innovate themselves. That, essentially, in a nutshell, is what we have seen here in Arkansas with the internet sales tax and the arguments that they present and everything else, even though this is, more money to the government in this case is not going to help Main Street businesses in the end because the internet is really kind of, in terms of e-commerce, is unstoppable. So this headline recently popped up. I didn't even know that this was a thing or this was a new technology until I read about this. Headline from the Associated Press, but I think it was in the Democrat Gazette. Car sharing raises tax issues. Cries of foul from rental sector. So now we have people doing what they did with Uber, but instead doing it with car rental services. And so here is another example of this phenomenon, which is essentially a way to kill the economic freedom of business owners and the people. Out of Phoenix, the AP reports that there's a guy named Chris Williamson, and Chris was in the market for a new family car. A timely ad and conversations with a coworker persuaded him to try something out of the ordinary. He bought a BMW 3 Series convertible and covers the payments by renting it to strangers on a peer-to-peer car-sharing app called Turo. It allows his family of 7 to have a nicer car essentially for free. Quote, "It's great to have a little bit of extra income and not have to worry about the car payments," said Williamson. But his customers and others using car-sharing apps around the United States get their rentals, you guessed it, tax-free. That's made them a target for rental car companies, airport authorities, and local governments. They say users of upstart apps should pay the same taxes and fees that come with traditional rental cars. Again, the rental cars, the traditional rental car businesses, airports, people, they're not going to the government and saying, "Hey, maybe you don't need to be taking so much of our money." Ever think about that? No, they don't think about that. They don't ask the government to lower their taxes so that it's a level playing field there. No, they get the government to Johnny sweep the legs out of the upcoming business that they don't want to compete with. That's all this is about. It's not about fairness. It's about the fact that they don't want to have to compete. So, quote, "These companies," listen to this, "these companies are very sophisticated, technology-savvy companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars invested in each of them," said Ray Wagner, Senior Vice President for Government Relations at Enterprise Holdings, parent of the nation's largest car rental company. "They should be expected to comply with the same rules as a small mom-and-pop rental car company located in rural Arizona." Mom-and-pop rental car... do you know any mom-and-pop rental car companies? You see what they've done there? What a great statement. What a great statement to manipulate public perception there from Enterprise. Turo says Enterprise is trying to stifle competition. Car-sharing companies, including Turo and Get Around, function like Airbnb for vehicles, allowing people to rent out their cars when they're not using them. Founded a decade ago, they've taken off recently with the help of millions of dollars from venture capitalists and other investors. That's putting them in conflict with the $42 billion per year rental industry and the tourism and government agencies that tax it and regulate safety and consumer protections. Again, just another example of what we have, of a phenomenon where you have a new business utilizing a new technology that the government couldn't anticipate, and that the status quo business, well, they're just too busy raking the cream off of what they got. But the market allows, through new technology, for a new business that's a competitor, and the old business says, "Hey, we're going to use the government to come after you." The government says, "Absolutely, you mean there's more money out there we could be taking from people?" And the business says, "Yeah, there is. Go get them." And ladies and gentlemen, that is the opposite of putting up with a temporary evil, working harder for yourself. Milton Friedman said a self-denying ordinance to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere. Otherwise, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But are these really good intentions? No, I don't think so. We've got Senator Mark Johnson coming your way next.
And from a campus or
the news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Talk about that UC Berkeley situation back in 2017. There was a lawsuit. Whatever happened with that, and why did you guys sue?
Yeah, that was a very crazy situation. So we at Young America's Foundation have been working with the Berkeley College Republicans for years to bring in conservative speakers to that otherwise, loony leftist campus. And what we found is 3 times in a row, when we tried to bring in 3 different speakers to that campus, administrators were pointing to this unwritten policy known as their high-profile speaker policy and using that to say that we were not allowed to have somebody speak on the main part of campus, they weren't allowed to speak after 3 p.m., and they weren't allowed to advertise that there was an event taking place. And so all of a sudden we realized this has happened 3 times in a row, this policy, we can't find it anywhere, and it's only being applied to conservatives. So then we went ahead and filed that federal lawsuit out there in the Ninth Circuit, and that battle dragged on for close to 2 years, but in the end the judge allowed our case to move forward under the First and 14th Amendment claims that we had made that Berkeley was violating those amendment rights of our students out there. And we ultimately were able to win that case when Berkeley realized that they were not going to be able to continue to act like this. And so they settled with us. They paid us $70,000 in legal fees. And most importantly, they had to fundamentally transform their policies to take this sort of unfettered discretion by administrators and get rid of it. So that way everybody on that campus knows exactly what to expect when they're bringing a speaker in. And since then, we've seen close to a dozen conservatives now speak on that campus without any problem.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And that really kind of goes to generally, like, you need equal protection in administrative rules under the law, at a university. That would also really help people, these kids, when they get out into life and what to expect from the government as well. I mean, it's really sad. I was just comparing some of these colleges and these professors to, the liberal media. They claim to be objective. They're not. And colleges are supposed to be places where you have a free, open exchange of ideas, and you can. That's not the case anymore either. So it's very, very frustrating. I know here in your article again at Town Hall, according to a Fox News report, a student at Indiana University of Pennsylvania was kicked out of a Christianity class for doing what?
Well, excuse me. This situation continues to sort of devolve on college campuses. If you look at what is now expected of students and what is, accepted on behalf of students, if you're a liberal student, you can do anything you want, including assault conservative speakers. But if you dare to, ask a sincere question or speak the truth in a class, you're going to be completely kicked out of the classroom. And it's just a double standard that I think you mentioned there when you were talking about the liberal media. But if you look at these schools, they always claim to be, Berkeley claims to be the home of the free speech movement. They all claim to focus on free speech and First Amendment rights. But really, if you look at how it goes, it's only, those rights are only extended to you if you're a liberal or a leftist. But when you're a conservative, you're basically checking all your rights at the door and walking into more or less a lion's den to try and, do your best, knowing, though, that you're probably going to be persecuted or even kicked out of a class just because you ask honest questions.
Yeah, and in this case, according to the Fox News report, a student was kicked out of class, a Christianity class, for daring to state, quote, the official view of biologists is that there are only 2 genders. The professor couldn't handle hearing the truth and kicked the student out of class. And then referred him to the university's Academic Integrity Board. Now, number 2 is a quote by Andrew Clavin. Quote, feminism has sucked all the joy out of femininity. Wow. I love Mr. Clavin, but he's right.
He's absolutely right, and I think he frequently addresses this topic. But also Christina Hoff Summers is somebody we have on campuses all the time. She was just at Skidmore College and UC Santa Barbara and UC Santa Cruz, and what we see is people react to her and start calling her a misogynist, even though she's basically world-renowned feminist who is just trying to kind of take back feminism from the radical left, who have basically demanded that women just punish men now rather than seek equality. And she's been shouted down before, and it's just ridiculous that she brings the facts in and says, the wage gap is not something that the left makes it out to be, that modern feminism is actually bad for men and boys because it's just seeking to punish them. And, again, all she does is cite facts. She brings in the printed out, copies of police reports and the economic data and everything else. And that still isn't enough because the left, again, their feelings always trump the facts.
The one of the things that I know they couldn't stand is when, you have this skewed statistic, phony statistic about the rape culture.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Welcome to hour number 2. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we're building a liberty machine. Welcome back, those of you listening on radio stations across the state of Arkansas, as well as those of you watching at facebook.com/Conduit News, YouTube channel, Conduit News, or conduitnews.com. So we really appreciate it. Folks, it's that time again. We've got Senator Mark Johnson is on the phone with us. Senator Johnson, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning to you, sir. Now, your District 15, remind everybody where District 15 is.
Well, we only have a half hour, but I'll be quick. It is much of Faulkner County, excluding the city of Conway and the city of Bologna, the east side there. So I have north and south of Conway. I also have northwest, West Pulaski County, so I have part of Maumelle and all of the Ferndale area, West Pulaski County where I live. Most of Perry County, all of Conway County, and about the middle third of Van Buren County. So I go from Ferndale, west of Little Rock, all the way to north of Clinton. So it's a big, mostly rural district.
Yeah, it really is. So, Senator Johnson, I really appreciate you coming on, Mark, and talking to us and giving us your impression of the session. So let's just start generally. Senator Mark Johnson, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, we did some things we should have done and could have done, and we cut some taxes. We raised some other taxes, although I think the taxes that we raised, I think we could almost call user fees. We increased the tax on cell phones, the 911 service fee, which was, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest bang for the buck things that the consumer could get by paying an extra 60 cents a month. It could potentially save your life with the modern technology related to 911. We reduced income taxes. We did raise highway taxes, and we also referred to the voters the opportunity to raise them even more. And I actually believe, talking to people, at least in my district, that people are going to support that. Paul, I have I'm going to call it a trophy. I don't know if it's probably, most people would think of it as one, but I have the lower control arm came off of my car because I hit a pothole big enough to break the control arm. And I got to thinking how much gasoline tax I would have to pay to equal the cost of the repair on that lower control arm. So it's a reminder to me that not taking care of our roads costs as well as taking care of them. So I believe we did the right thing in that regard. Most importantly, we cut our income taxes, both corporate and individual, and we especially, of course, the left likes to talk about, well, you're really cutting it on the rich. Well, we'd already done the middle class, the low income tax cuts in previous years, and it I believe will be a big thing in making Arkansas competitive with our neighboring states that we cut our income tax eventually to the top rate of 5.9%. We're competing with Texas and Tennessee that don't even have personal income taxes. And I've always said that if if you want to know what difference it makes, go look at the Toyota truck plant in San Antonio and realize that probably, but for the Arkansas income tax, that plant would be in Marion, Arkansas right now. So I gave the session a B+. There were some things I wanted I didn't get. My most important one being the legislation to take pensions away from public officials that commit crimes in the line of duty.
So let's go there. I do want to come back to some of the tax stuff, but let's talk about that, because that was an effort to try to do something about the corruption.
Exactly.
We've seen a lot of corruption, former senators, and going to jail or being indicted. So why didn't that was a really good, I thought, disincentive to steal from the people if you lose your government pension if you're convicted of a crime. But why didn't that pass, Mark?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. The most important one being that it literally did get lost in the bureaucratic gobbledygook. The retirement committee retains an actuary, and I always thought the actuary's job was to kind of run the math to make sure that the people that are going to retire and the people that are paying in, it all balances out. The investments are doing well. In this case, the actuary raised the specter of our pension plan being jeopardized by the Internal Revenue Service because of a bill like this. I thought at the time it was bogus. I think it's still bogus, and I plan on continuing to fight for this. As a matter of fact, there are over 20 states, I forget the number keeps growing, that have done something similar to this. And I simply plan on bringing it up. As a matter of fact, this Friday, we have an interim study committee meeting of retirement committee, and we're going to talk about it's what's called an interim study proposal, which is basically we referred a bill to interim study, and the committee's going to study it. But hopefully we can flesh this thing out a lot better and have more time to answer some of the objections that might be, and it's even some legitimate objections that might have been raised. Paul, the retirement committee is a joint committee, and it only meets once a week. Well, if you miss your window or you have to tweak a bill, then you've lost at least a week of the session. And I found myself at the end, after agreeing to make my bill one of the, or part of my bill, I actually split it into two parts, part of my bill to be part of the agreed bipartisan leadership effort on ethics, which I think was reported in the paper. Only about half those bills passed. So we had our work cut out, and on that issue, and for a number of reasons, I'll take my share of the blame for it. We didn't get it done, but I'm not giving up on this one. I sent it to interim study. We're going to study it until we get it passed.
It's good. It's good that you're not giving up on that. I found the charging of Medicaid provider Basil or is her name. She was recently charged, pled not guilty, by the state of Arkansas, and I saw that in the paper. And then I also saw that the them guys reported that she was testifying before a Senate committee like 6 weeks ago. And I thought to myself, wow, we still do have what appears to be a corruption problem out there, and we need to keep pursuing this. So I'm glad that you're not going to give up on that, and I know you would. I know this was a priority before the session. We're talking with Senator Mark Johnson. This is his impression of the session, 2017. Now, I'd like to go back on taxes because I'd like to ask you a question on that. I understand, the arguments from those that voted for the gas tax increase, that voted for the continuation of the half-cent sales tax that's set to expire, or referring it to the people. I understand the argument. Roads were bad. We got to have money. They're going to get so bad that it's going to cost even more to fix them. I understand that. This conversation, though, was had, from what I can tell, without any legitimate discussion of finding savings elsewhere. So address that, and also if you could answer, do you think that when it's all said and done, fiscal year 2020, fiscal year 2021, do you think the people of Arkansas will be paying more to the government than before you guys had your recent session?
Well, Paul, let me answer it this way. I think in the short run, we're going to see some things that we're paying more to the government, but I think in the long run, we're going to start seeing some things kick in, including the 5.9%, where we're paying less to the government. Now, part of that is going to be because simply the economy is doing well, and we have some triggers that can allow things to other revenue sources to start to phase out. Of course, the grocery tax is pretty well gone. I'd like to see it completely gone, and to all my friends that like the 1/8 cent conservation tax, I don't think that was good policy in the first place to put that in the Constitution. Even though good things are done with it, I think that we should take that off the groceries too. I don't think there should be any tax on groceries at all, and we should implement that as soon as we can. Bottom line to your question, I think that we're in the middle of something, and I think it's something that the rest of the General Assembly needs to step up to. Yes, we've done the things on the tax side, and I hope in 2021 we start doing some things on the spending side. Okay. We did. There is and that's the thing. I mean, yeah, we just had a tremendous month of April, and of course that's when people pay their income tax. But the revenue projections were way up. The actual revenue was way above projection in April, which shows that, thank you, President Trump, for the tax cuts nationally. The economy's doing well, and I'd like to see that. If we have the same response to the tax cuts from Arkansas that we've had nationally, then we're going to see plenty of revenue to run the state, and we can start cutting some spending. I mean, some real things. And I don't expect a huge amount from this, but I do believe we will see some savings from the governor's transformation. I don't think it's the panacea to fix state government by any means, but it's a step in the right direction, and I appreciate him doing it. I told him when he asked me how I stood on it, I just made it simple. I said, Governor, you're the head of the executive branch. Within certain parameters, I think you ought to be able to organize it as you wish. But he believes it will result in some efficiencies, and certainly not having every small agency have their own HR department and their own accounting department can result in some just plain old efficiency savings, and I hope we see that, Paul.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I hope that the governor's transformation, I hope it works well. Yeah, I also hope that it saves money. And time will tell. I'm also, glad that you brought up the record revenue, because that was one. And I know hindsight's 20/20, Mark. We're talking with Senator Mark Johnson. I really appreciate you coming on. I know hindsight's 20/20, but when I saw that there was $125 million over projection. I think it was like a total of $958 million for the month of April, but that was $125 million over what they had anticipated. I thought, well, the gas tax increase, 3 cents, 6 cents, was to raise $95 million, and here is $125 million. And I thought, wow, I know you can't necessarily, we didn't know that was going to happen, but there were some people that said, we can pay for our roads if we'll just take the revenue increases and kind of pay as we go.
Well, but you have to have a stable amount of highway revenue, and that's considered special revenue. And the general revenue that you're referring to, it's the stuff that can go more up and down. It fluctuates more, and sometimes those revenues have been below projection. So, yes, you're right. And Paul, while I know I'm old-fashioned in this regard, I would like to see us have people that drive cars or buy cars, and we buy gasoline, and of course now we even added electric cars, had an additional registration fee, basically to pay the fact that electric cars don't use any fuel, thus don't pay their share of road taxes. So, I've always looked at that as a user fee. We don't have toll roads in Arkansas. We tax you generally at the gas pump to pay for the roads, and I like to see us doing that, and I'd like to see us not continue to move in the direction of using general revenue for highways, simply because it's not a stable actual form of revenue. And, Paul, we can laugh, we can talk about all these taxes and this one and that one, but really, truly, the question is government taking it out of your left pocket, your right pocket, your shirt pocket, or your front pocket?
Yes.
I'd like to see us reduce the overall tax burden on the people, and the only way we're really going to do that in the long run is to start reining in the cancer of spending in state government. It's just the most natural thing on earth for government to grow, and we have to make a concerted effort to start to reel it in. And I think that's something you'll see more of as we move forward. I know that a lot of members of the General Assembly, you've probably heard Lieutenant Governor Griffin talk about what he calls the toe tax, the old way. Mm-hmm. And he believes that by just implementing some common sense savings and spending, that we can reduce the overall cost to government without burdening and actually give the people a significant tax relief and without costing us any services, just doing it, he said, a new way and a more efficient way rather than what he calls the old way.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll see that in the future. Last question. Towards the very end of the session, probably a pretty big controversy where we actually saw the left be the radical left, had to do with sanctuary cities. The governor signed it. That was a good thing. What were your thoughts on how that all played out?
Well, I was really pleased to see that. That was Senator Stubblefield's bill, and he worked really hard on it. Had to go back to the House committee a second time. I was over there when he took it to the House committee the first time, and I was really, really proud of the work he did on it. And frankly, after the left came in and flexed their muscle a little bit in committee, the conservatives, and I'm going to give the conservative leadership, the speaker, and others in the House, Representative Richmond, came forth and came back and flexed their muscle, got people in that committee, which is hard to do. The afternoon meetings, the last few days of the session, got that bill out, got it on the floor, and passed it. I was thrilled with that, and it needed to be done. But it's funny, Paul. Since the session's over, I've mellowed out. At first, I was upset about some things we didn't get done, including my retirement bills. But had another bill that was important to me. It was to try to protect our monuments around the state.
Yeah.
And I got it out of the Senate, but I failed to get it out of House committee. There was a lot of concern that it might affect what cities could do, moving a broken water line goes under a monument, and I'm going to take the full blame for that. I tried to cast that net a little too broadly, and again, that's another one I'm sent to interim study. I'm going to work on a bill that will protect these monuments without jeopardizing any work that localities need to do. And again, that I just kind of ran out of time on that one, and maybe I can chalk that up to being a freshman, though I really don't.
No, you're not.
I don't lean on that very often.
Senator, this was your first term, but you were not a freshman for sure because of your vast knowledge and experience. Senator Mark Johnson, been a pleasure, sir. Thank you for giving us some time this morning. We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Paul, and give my best to my friend Senator Flippo, who I understand is going to be coming on later.
Yeah, Senator Flippo coming up here in a few minutes, 10 minutes. So,
Great.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you so much, Paul.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Folks, we're going to take a break, reset. You heard it. Coming up at 7:33, we'll be talking with Senator Scott Flippo. Back in a minute. Sure, on college campuses. And so here's somebody, Miss Summers, that claims, that's a feminist and is now saying, hang on, wait a second, this statistic's wrong. And they really can't handle that.
Well, they can't. And I mean, all it takes is somebody, actually looking at the number that the left is citing in this and realize that it's clearly not based in reality or based in truth, because the statistic that they often cite would make American college campuses more dangerous than walking through like a war-torn nation in the Middle East as far as safety for women goes. And obviously that's not the case. No parent is sending their kid off to college with a clear conscience if that were really the case. And so again, it's just, I think it goes back to the way that the left has sort of corrupted education as a whole, where these are the kind of things that they're teaching them that are just not true. And so you see it reflected again then how they treat conservative speakers. And I think we see it to a certain extent then now moving on into the mainstream culture, which I think is the really scary part of why a lot of more Americans are taking note of what's going on call.
Hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. You know, for all of our listeners, if you ever miss the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com. Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So Senator, I don't know if you heard what Senator Johnson said in that last interview, but he did say that we've at some point have to focus on spending, which is saying that we're not focusing on spending right now. That's not a priority, and it hasn't been. I mean, just historically, look, we're not focused on trying to get spending under control in the state at all. And the reason we know that is because, you know, listen, everybody's for good roads, but raising taxes should be the last resort. And we weren't able to pay for these new roads that we want through savings. And it wasn't even a discussion about it, right? Again, it had been one thing if they'd have been like, well, we need $100 million, and we went and looked at the books and we found 50 in savings. We were able to save $50 million. We're going to take away from this program and we're going to use it to pay for our roads here. And so we only really need $50 million. So, I mean, but even that what didn't happen. So that's really frustrating. And I'll tell you what else is frustrating. You know, look, I think bringing the income tax rate from 6.9 to 5.9 is fantastic. I think that's good. From a structural standpoint, it's great. But if you're doing that, and we're going to realize that in 2 years or so, but we got to pay all these taxes in the short term, and we can't bind future legislatures. The taxes on the people are going up. It is a net tax. People are going to be paying more money. And that's what's so frustrating. And I'll tell you what else is frustrating is that if you take the gas tax increase and then you take the sales tax that's referred to the voters, okay, that's pretty much a $400 million tax plan when you take in the cities and counties and what the state's going to get out of this, okay? Since Governor Hutchinson took office, we've cut income taxes by combined $248 million. So with only two votes, you now have a 2-to-1 increase ratio. Well, close to it. Close to it, right? Like, forget about the ratio. With just those two votes, you've essentially erase. If you're talking about a $400 million increase from the people, we've combined $248 million income tax cuts. With those two votes, you've now basically erased, the gains. I find that interesting.
As campuses now, because they're seeing ridiculous behavior from young adults in the workplace, and they're trying to figure out where did they learn this behavior, and it turns out they learned it all in their classroom.
We're talking with Spencer Brown. He's a spokesman. He identifies as a spokesman for Young America's Foundation. They are instrumental in getting all these conservative speakers to college campuses and in front of young people. Another great young conservative is Allie Stuckey, quoted in this piece, "Life is the most fundamental right. None of the other rights listed in the Bill of Rights actually exist without the first right to life." Talk about this idea of being pro-life and taking that message, Spencer, and to young people who are not pro-life. They're pro-abortion.
Well, exactly. They're being, at this point, basically pro-death at any stage. If you look kind of what I was talking about at the last point about how the mainstream culture is reflecting what's happening on college campuses, if you look, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, the left talking point on abortion was really that line, they want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And what we've seen is that has completely been thrown out the window. And now if you look at the proposals that were put forward and even passed, in New York or Virginia, where they want, abortion up to and at the point of birth at this point, and for any reason, not just for the health of the mother or whatever other reason they may come up with. That's something that we've seen on college campuses for years that's now broken out into mainstream, national politics. And so if you look at being pro-life on a college campus and suggesting, there are other options, abortion is not the answer, there are plenty of other options that don't involve killing a child, those people who are pushing those pro-life ideas are completely demonized and maligned as being, misogynist, being oppressive, trying to keep women down. And often we see, pro-life clubs on these campuses being either shut down or defunded just because the radical left will protest so strongly.
Yeah, and again, this is and what's frustrating to me, and I think a lot of Americans, and again is alarming, Spencer, is that you guys are just trying to have the conversation in part of this lecture series, and you're trying to be silenced. They're spraying you with bleach. They're doing all these things that just are, they're not civil. And it's like basic concepts. Again, the last point here, Brian Brinberg, free markets fundamentally run on service, not to make everyone's outcome equal. So this flies in the face of maybe some of their Marxist professors that say, hey, look, on a chalkboard, okay, when you don't take the human condition or the depravity and, on a chalkboard, everything works out great. If we just are all forced to put all of our money into one big pot and divide it up equally, then society would be great and we would have equality of outcome. To challenge that is somehow hate speech now in on some college campuses.
Absolutely it is, and I'm glad you mentioned Marxism there, because if you look at what these schools are...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
For some reason, I love that riff, and it's just like 90210-870-275-9799. Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. We've got Senator Scott Flippo from District 17 is on the line. Scott, how are you this morning?
Paul, good morning.
Good
Happy to be
morning.
with you.
Yes, sir. It's always great to have you
on. Are you
on.
a big 90210 fan?
Well, not really. I mean, I think it was a little past before my time. I had two older sisters. I think it was kind of more in their wheelhouse. But I remember like theme music. Like I remember the theme music to Dallas. I wasn't a big Dallas fan. Go ahead.
You're talking to probably the world's authority on Dallas.
Oh, really?
I found out the other day that you can actually watch that on Amazon Prime.
Ooh, interesting.
So there go my Sunday.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Well, now I've got Prime. I'm gonna have to check it out. I just liked the theme songs. Like I like all of the theme songs. I like the theme songs to.
There will never be another show that ever comes close to Dallas, Paul. that's not my opinion. That's just fact.
That's just a fact. That's just an objective truth. You heard it today on Conduit News Radio from Senator Scott Flippo.
Well, how are you, Paul?
I'm doing good. So, impression of the session, 2019. Let's just start generally. Senator Flippo,
Sure.
What was your impression of the session?
Paul, I always think that asking a legislator their impression of the session is like asking a new parent if their baby is the most beautiful baby in the world. Of course, I think overall it was a pretty good session. We accomplished some pretty good things. Let me start off with some things that I and a few of my colleagues in the House worked on. Representative Bentley and I got a bill passed that is going to require work requirements for food stamp beneficiaries. That's a great thing.
Yes.
We got clarity on gun rights, specifically permitless carry for open or concealed. And that was something that Representative Brandt spearheaded over in the House, and then I carried that same resolution over in the Senate. And for some Arkansans that still believe that Act 746 was ambiguous and needed clarification, that's exactly what we did. We also spent, the past 18 months leading up to this session working on our state procurement laws. And, you have an educated listening audience, and so they understand that procurement is how the state spends their money. And we spent 18 months looking on that. That came up with 67 recommendations. We condensed that down to 6 bills, and we got each one of those passed. The other thing that kind of got some traction at the end of the session was legal notices, and not requiring counties and cities and school districts to post those in the newspaper, and they could do it online. Well, that's a pretty big one to me because that's your money that these entities are paying to put these legal notices in the newspaper. Of course, the newspapers did not like that, and they fought it tooth and nail. But as I told them during my testimony, this bill was not going to be the dagger to their industry, which they claimed. I said that was the internet and Twitter that was the dagger for you all. This just says that we're not going to pay for your life support.
Yeah, I bet they didn't like that at all. You took a lot of hate for that, by the way.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed that when I ran that bill, that all of a sudden, whenever there was an article about me in the paper, they used about the worst possible photo they can find.
Yeah,
I found it somewhat humorous, but the overall, the overall is, why should we, as taxpayers, be responsible for subsidizing, the newspaper industry, the media? Why is it our responsibility to subsidize their business model? Because that's what this came down to. And unfortunately, the newspapers still have a little bit of clout, and they were able to get this bill stalled up to the point where I had to amend it to allow for they could advertise online as well as in the news and also in the newspaper. What I wanted to do was do it solely online, but I had to settle for allowing them to do online and newspaper. But we're going to give it a go in another 2 years.
Wow. Well, I definitely know that. I mean, like I said, I remember that. As a matter of fact, I think I ran into you in the halls of the Capitol right when you were heading to run that bill. We're talking with Senator Scott Flippo from District 17, which is a district in north central Arkansas, which is beautiful country up there.
Beautiful.
So I want to ask you this. I know there were some good things done. Senator, we were just talking with Mark Johnson, Senator Stubblefield's Sanctuary Cities bill, trying to...
That was a great bill.
That was fantastic. But let's talk about taxes for a second. And I know we had you on previously to talk a little bit about this. And I get some of the arguments for people that voted for, the tax increases for roads. But this is the first question. Do you think when it's all said and done, you got income taxes, you have all these other taxes, you think the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government?
We're just talking about with a gas tax or overall?
Well, just say overall, when like fiscal year 2020, you think the people are going to be paying more to the government than they were?
I think there's a chance they will, Paul. And I'll tell you why. A big part of that is obviously the e-fairness, the internet tax. And nobody can tell me definitively what that collection's going to be. So we had a corporate income tax, measure built into that bill, which is, obviously politics. Hard to vote against an income tax cut. As you and your listeners know, the Supreme Court ruled, I guess it was last year, that states have the ability to collect sales tax from businesses outside of their state boundaries. And so, I've heard several projections from DFNA on what they expected, those collections to be. Of course, when you're trying to pass a bill, I think they're always going to try to, to give you numbers that's going to show that it's going to be a net reduction. But I don't put it out of the realm of possibility that you're going to see an increase in sales tax collection that's going to increase, that's going to be more than what this corporate income tax reduction is going to be. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Well, and plus you have the situation where, and this is just the way the bills were written. Hey, this is the nature of government. Your gas tax gets collected in October of this year, begins. The internet sales tax starts collecting in July of this year, but we don't see the income tax cut fully develop or the corporate income tax fully develop for a few years down the road.
Sure, I think like 2020.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's more than that, but
21
further than that. Yeah, but because it's kind of a phase in, and so that's
it is.
Go ahead.
No, it is. And the biggest thing I try to do with people is to be honest with them. I mean, when I ran for the Senate in 2014, one of the lines that I used is that I was tired of a government that would peel my leg and tell me that it was raining. I might not like everything that you're telling me, but at least just lay it out to me and give me the truth, and instead of patronizing me and trying to, spin it to something that sounds more appealing than what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's good, and I know that you've always done that, and I get it. I that this is the part of the session economically. Like, I can get behind the income tax cut. I think it was great. I mean, and I like that it was a clean bill. I think it's going to be good to take us from 6.9 to 5.9. The structure of it, it's going to make us more competitive. But I look at overall, if you combine it all, and I'm like, well, I wish. Let me ask you this: do you wish at all that maybe there would have been more of a discussion about reducing spending, so we didn't have to ask the people to pay more in taxes?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I don't think the discussion that you're referring to, but that's part of what we did with our procurement process and overall is that how the state spends the taxpayers' money. Looking at that and making those hard determinations, and that was one of the things that when I ran, I co-sponsored Representative Bentley's food stamp bill that called for work requirements. One of my colleagues in the Senate questioned me and said that, are you aware, Senator Flippo, of all these economic deserts in the state of Arkansas? And I said, I am aware that there's places.
You mean like a
lot of industry,
like a food desert? Is that what you're saying?
No, like a job desert, like economic desert.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And so, what this bill called for is it said, you either had to get a job, you had to participate in workforce training, or you could volunteer. But I made a point and said, if you can't get a job where you live, then it's time to look, to think about relocating. And you just would have thought the sky was falling. And I said that to a point, which is it our job again as taxpayers to pay for somebody to stay somewhere where they cannot find a job. Mm-hmm. And you talk about, spending cuts and spending reductions. I mean, that's kind of what that is geared towards.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I think I think in the future we've got to address spending. April, let me get your thoughts on this in hindsight. Okay, so in the hindsight of your impression of the session, we had a report where the revenue for the month of April, it was a great month for the state, right? And there was like $125 million, Senator Flippo, more than they anticipated. I mean, that's a ton of money right there. What did you think about that?
So I think government's always going to be, as conservative with their forecasts when they're predicting their revenues, for a year, for a month. That was an exceptionally high month, and I don't know exactly, what to attribute that uptick for. But when you look at that, I think part of that needs to be is how can we get that money, some of that money, back to the taxpayers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's reasonable when you have those kinds of surpluses. Now, what I think is important is there have been recent months where our forecast, where our revenues have been below forecast. So this is not to say that every month we have $100+ million above forecast. But when we do have, times like that, be them a month or multiple months, it is incumbent upon us, and that's when we've done away with the general improvement funds, is to say when you have these surpluses at the end of the year, as a Republican, it talks about tax cuts and less government. How can we get that money back to the people?
Yeah.
And Paul, this is a good point that I want to kind of tie into the internet tax. And you kind of correct me if you think that my thought process on this is wrong.
Okay.
Is, a couple of years ago, before the Supreme Court had ruled this, that was kind of one of the objections that was raised, was this wasn't even, this wasn't even allowed under law for a state, for Arkansas to collect, or any other state to collect, sales tax on a corporation that was outside of the state boundaries. Now of course, they've thrown that out. And then they said that it is legal. And then we put in this corporate income tax reduction. But I think the overall thing is that people feel that the only way to shrink government is to starve what you feed it. And we don't really care where that comes from. But if we're going to shrink government, it has to have less. You think is that a correct analysis, do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean...
And not just for you, but for one of your listeners.
No, I mean, I agree. I think our tax policy in Arkansas drives spending. I think the Revenue Stabilization Act is fantastic in terms of keeping us from running like a deficit, but it also sort of ensures that whatever they get, they're going to spend. You know what I'm saying? So, if you starve it, like you said, you're going to, force them to do what they got to do with less money.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way, that you can ever shrink government. Now, this bill was it was messaged as the e-fairness. Of course, you're never going to call it the internet sales tax. It's going to be the e-fairness bill. Mm-hmm. Now, Paul, you've been around the Marble halls long enough to know that they're not going to call it an internet tax.
Of course not.
Now, do I think that this is going to change people's shopping patterns? I really don't. I think people, as time progresses, more and more people are changing the way that they shop, and that means that they're moving more and more towards online. So, they said this was a main street fairness, and I think that is a reasonable argument that if you have a brick and mortar in your hometown that's selling the same good that you can go to Amazon and get, but they're required to charge you a sales tax on there.
Yeah,
it's not really fair to them, and they're paying local taxes in your communities for your schools, your libraries, your roads.
Yeah.
Look, your police and fire.
Look, I want to hit two more things before we go because we're running out of time. But we're talking with Senator Scott Flippo. Now, you're talking about the internet tax. So, and we've already mentioned this before. We've said this on air before. You voted for that bill because the corporate tax cut that was put with that, right?
You bet.
Okay, so but then you voted against the continuation of the levy of the 0.5% sales tax for you, so meaning it's set to sunset, and you voted against referring that back to the people. So tell me why you voted against that.
Biggest reason is when that was put before the people, I guess 6 years ago, the way that it was sold to them is that it's going to sunset in 10 years. And now, surprise, surprise, Paul, as we're about 3 or 4 years out from it, sunsetting, well, we still have a need for that money. We want to keep that money coming in. Well, then why did you tell people to get it past the first time that it was going to sunset?
Right.
And, so I had a kind of a principled objection to that. And the other thing I think is that, it's easy for me as a legislator to want to vote on something to refer to the people and not have to vote it on myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the people sent us down there to make difficult decisions, and sometimes, an unpopular decision, you have to deal with those ramifications, whatever they may be, as long as you think it was the right thing to do. So, I voted for that gas tax, and I voted against this. That was a difficult decision. I thought it was the right one at the end of the day, or I wouldn't have done it. But, I don't think the people sent me down there to try to farm out difficult parts of my job.
Well, oh, you mean, like to the people. Yeah, no, I mean, and, now it's, like you said, you think it was the right thing to do, and now, you can take your argument, to the people and explain why, and that's part of this whole process. And so, last question, and we've got a little bit of time left. So, towards the end of the session, we had the Arkansas work requirements by a federal judge were thrown out, and now that's being challenged, right? So what were your thoughts on that? Because
it's not being challenged. I mean, they've thrown them out.
Yeah, they've thrown them out. I mean, the decision is being appealed. Is what I
it's being appealed, correct.
So I guess my question is, did you find it odd, Senator Flippo, that you guys in the Senate voted on the appropriation a mere minutes before the news came out that signature domestic achievement Arkansas works, the work requirements are no longer in effect?
Yeah, let me tell you this, Paul. I do not believe in coincidences in politics, and that's a pretty generalized answer. But no, that was no coincidence.
Yeah.
And the fear that if that didn't get done, that there would be a great struggle to get it passed. If they didn't do that before the courts handed down their verdict. And you're right. I mean, it was literally minutes after we voted on that verdict came down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the most obvious thing. And even when we were able to, when we adjourned session to go over the budget, to get that, because they wanted to get that out. Everybody knew that verdict was getting ready to be delivered at any minute. So there was a rush to get that done.
Yeah. And that's frustrating, right? I mean, you find that frustrating because, I mean, you guys only have constitutional power once every 2 years for issues like this, or if the governor calls a special session. And so, rushing to avoid the potential controversy, I don't know, that just kind of seems a little underhanded. What do you think?
I think that it was going to pass either way. I think that had you waited, it would have been more difficult. That's not to say impossible. I think that they would have eventually gotten the votes. But yeah, I think that's the again, an important part of it is not just talking about what you want to talk about, but talking about the things you need to talk about. And for us to have to come back and talk about Arkansas Works, that's giving free insurance to able-bodied working-age adults. That's what it is. And that now we're not even going to have work requirements on there. That's not going to be popular here in Arkansas, but if we're going to continue it, let's at least have that conversation about why we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't had. I mean, it was kind of rushed, and, that is what it is.
Well, to your point about eventually getting the votes, you're probably right. I mean, the House was able to hold it up. They did, and then they waited 24 hours or whatever, and then they had the vote. So to your point, that you're probably right. I just thought it was interesting to see, people are like, well, we don't want to have this debate again. But anyway, I
think it's weird that when you do that, it just, in my opinion, Paul, that when you do something like that, it just lends more credence to kind of the shakiness of the overall policy. Which, if it's such a rock solid policy, why would you need to rush it like that to begin with?
That's a really good point. Senator Scott Flippo, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your thoughts and spending some time with us this morning.
Paul, I appreciate you, your listeners. Keep up the good work, and have me on again. Look forward to it.
All righty. Senator Scott Flippo, everybody. We're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Teaching in the classroom, they're actually glorifying Marx now and suggesting that his ideas are somehow relevant to the 21st century, and we ought to give Marxism another try as if it hasn't, been responsible for the death of millions of people around the world in history. But yeah, I mean, this quote from Brian Bremberg, who's from the King's College, he speaks at a lot of YAPS conferences and on a couple other campuses, basically just refutes the two main ideas that are being pushed on college campuses, and that is one, that free markets are somehow oppressive and tools of, racist patriarchy, and then also that, they are completely, they just are a horrible plague, basically, to society. And in fact, free markets run on service. If you're not serving somebody in the free market, your business is not going to work and you're not going to get anywhere. And then also the idea that outcome of equality is different from outcome of opportunity is something that's just completely mixed up in college campuses and in classrooms today, because they take the idea of the American dream, or take the line like life, liberty, and the
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. So that was, we had two impressions of the session today. Senator Mark Johnson, that's going to be up at conduitnews.com. Senator Scott Flippo as well at conduitnews.com. As well as if you missed the first hour of the show, we had Jordan Stein on from Gun Owners of America. He is the Director of Communications for Gun Owners of America. So be sure to check that out up at conduitnews.com. Then see, what do we have tomorrow here? Oh, yeah. Tomorrow on the program, I'm going to be interviewing author William G. Highland Jr., who wrote a book called George Mason. It's just out. Very new, I guess less than a month. George Mason, the founding father who gave us the Bill of Rights. We'll be talking with him at 6:33 tomorrow, as well as State Representative Robin Lundstrom on the program to give her impression of the session. Then again on Friday, Senator Terry Rice will be giving his impression of the session. So we really appreciate, everybody just willing to come on and use this medium, and answer my questions and inquiries, but also just, use this medium to tell the folks, tell the state how you thought it went. And we really appreciate that. Let's see here. Do we have updates from Donald Trump's Twitter? Yes. Now, here's the thing. Trump tweeted his defense. The New York Times got his tax returns for 10 years, from 85 to 95 or 84 to 94, and they're reporting massive losses. Trump's not a businessman, and he's a liar, and, everything else. President Trump tweeted this. Real estate developers in the 1980s and 1990s, more than 30 years ago, were entitled to massive write-offs and depreciation, which would, if one was actively building, show losses and tax losses in almost all cases. Much was non-monetary, sometimes considered a tax shelter. You would get it by building or even buying. You always wanted to show losses for tax purposes. Almost all real estate developers did, and often renegotiate with the banks. It was a sport. Additionally, the very old information put out is highly inaccurate and fake news, a fake news hit job. Now, he's since tweeted 6 other things, and I just refreshed here. Hang on. He retweeted a Kevin McCarthy piece on Fox News, but here's his personal tweets. We're trying to do these Donald Trump Twitter updates. On the China deal, President Trump, the reason for the China pullback and attempted renegotiation of the trade deal is the sincere hope that they will be able to negotiate with Joe is the sincere hope that they will be able to negotiate with Joe Biden or one of the very weak Democrats and thereby continue to rip off the United States, $500 billion a year for years to come. Guess what? That's not going to happen. China has just informed us that the vice premier are now coming to the United States to make a deal. We'll see, but I'm very happy with the over $100 billion a year in tariffs filling U.S. coffers. Great for U.S., not good for China. And then he says the real obstruction of justice is what the Democrats are trying to do to this attorney general. That's a quote from Congressman Jim Jordan. So the president, very active on Twitter today, so that's going to be bad for leftists, really good for their therapists, though. Folks, go to conduitnews.com to get this broadcast more like it. And Arkansas, we'll see you tomorrow bright and early. Be safe.